Hello everyone, it's Ash Maurya, founder of Spark 59 and author of the best-selling book, Running Lean. Yes, I happen to have written a book, and I do spend quite a bit of time now traveling the world teaching others how to raise their odds of building a successful product. But I identify myself first and foremost as a practicing entrepreneur. I love building new products and I love entrepreneurs, so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is the sad reality. Most products in general fail. While a lot of my work initially came out of the high-tech startup world, I've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of products and companies over the last 4 years, ranging from small startups to large Fortune 500 companies. These dismal odds of success don't just apply to startups, but plague any new product that operates under conditions of high uncertainty. The good news is that the solution to this problem also applies just as equally to large companies as it does to startups. But before we can talk about the solution, we have to first better understand the problem. So let's take a step back and see why new products are hard. There was a study that was run in Silicon Valley that studied 1,000 startups that failed. All of these companies had a big vision that they captured on their business plan. They used this business plan to raise enough investment and even managed to build a product exactly as they had specified in their business plan. Despite all this, they still failed. They failed not because they failed to build what they set out to build, but rather because they wasted needless time, money, and effort building the wrong product. In other words, they built something that nobody wanted. They failed to find a market for their product. Those of you in large companies can probably relate to this story where millions of dollars are spent on products that go nowhere. When it comes to new product innovation, there are generally two leaps of faith. The first leap of faith is, can we build it? This is the technical feasibility question. We need to convince ourselves that we can indeed build a particular solution that we have in mind. But the bigger leap of faith is, will anyone care? In other words, even if you do manage to bring your product to life, will you be able to attract enough customers and build a sustainable business around it? This is the bigger leap of faith of the two for most products, because with things like the internet, open source, and cloud computing, we can build almost anything these days, given enough time, money, and effort. The bigger question usually isn't can we, but should we? Even though this seems like common sense, most people still do this backwards. I attribute three main reasons for this. First, as entrepreneurs, we tend to prematurely fall in love with our solutions. We're just wired this way. When we get hit by an idea, all we see is a solution box, what I show here as awesome. We believe that as long as we build a great product, everything else will take care of itself. But unless what we think of as awesome is truly going to be awesome for enough people, it's not going to matter at the end of the day. The mistake we make is that we quickly rush up this pyramid to the top and start building a product without taking the time necessary to build a strong foundation first. Before rushing to build a product, you need to spend just enough time to deconstruct your idea into its component pieces of vision, strategy, and product. Your vision captures your why, your strategy captures your how, and finally, your product captures what you build. Next, the way we traditionally build products actually gets in the way of building a successful product. If we go back to this statement from earlier, the number one reason why products fail is that we build the wrong product. The way to avoid building the wrong product is by learning what customers want. So let's see where we do this kind of learning in the traditional product development cycle. We do some of this customer learning at the front end when we gather requirements from customers. But most of this learning only happens after we release our product to customers. There's a big middle where we disengage from customers for several months and sometimes even years at a time, building and perfecting our product. Sure, we're learning a lot about product development during that time, but we aren't learning about our customers and market. This is where we often go astray and either build too much or build the wrong product entirely. You can't afford to only talk to your customers during the tail ends of the product development cycle, but rather you need to build a continuous feedback loop with your customers throughout the entire product development cycle. And finally, we pay a lot of lip service to listening to customers, but you have to know how. If you've ever tried asking customers what they want, you can probably relate to this Henry Ford quote. Most people don't bother talking to customers because they don't consider them visionary enough. But buried in this quote is a hidden gem that is often missed. This is a customer problem statement. Customers are telling Henry Ford that they are unhappy with their existing solution, which happens to be a horse. They're also telling him what attribute of the solution they are most unhappy about. That is, it's not fast enough. Had Henry Ford literally taken the faster horse's suggestion and invested in genetic engineering, that might have been one way to go. But rather, he opted for mass producing the automobile, which was more technically feasible to him at the time. Steve Jobs nailed it when he said that it's not the customer's job to know what they want. That's all of our jobs as the entrepreneur or innovator. The way you do this is by first putting yourself inside your customers' minds, by deeply understanding the problems and worldviews that they have, and then building the best possible solution to address those problems. Next, I'm going to illustrate all of this by continuing the story I started earlier. After getting hit by an idea, typically our first concern is competition. We know we need to be different, so we start by studying existing competition. With a little bit of effort, we manage to define our solution in such a manner that makes it different enough. Oftentimes, we make our solution so unique that we even convince ourselves that there is no competition anymore. We believe that our unfair advantage will come from being a first mover, and that makes us happy. The first mover advantage is by far the most common unfair advantage cited on business plans. But for perspective, consider these companies. None of these companies were first movers in the respective products that we know them for. Rather, they were all fast followers. They all improved on an earlier innovation and displaced the first movers before them. I would argue that being truly first to market is not an unfair advantage, but an unfair disadvantage, because not only do you have to build a great product, but you also have the burden of building a market. I would similarly argue that none of these things listed here are by themselves defensible unfair advantages. Often at this point, people go from being happy about their unfair advantage to being unhappy again. But don't worry, I will define what constitutes a true unfair advantage in a future video, and will share numerous examples and strategies for acquiring these advantages. Beyond differentiation though, the other thing that keeps us up at night with a new idea is establishing enough runway to fund the building out of our solution. For that, we often turn to people with big bags of money. These might be external investors or internal budget gatekeepers at a company. But when we pitch them our idea, we often lead with our solution and tell them how great or unique it's going to be, but this often falls on deaf ears. These external stakeholders don't really care about your solution. Actually, they expect it to be great because you are the expert and that's your job. But they are in the business for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to make a return on their investment. There's a simple equation that has to work where they give you a bag of money and you are supposed to return back 10 bags of money at some point in the future. So they judge your product pitch not on the basis of how innovative it is, but rather as a risk profile. First, they want to see if there's any evidence that anyone other than yourself, your team, and maybe your mom cares about your product. Next, they want to understand the business model economics of how you will make money, which is the intersection of your cost structure and revenue streams. They're less concerned with who your customers are, but they do want to know how many people that represents, which they can then use to size the potential market opportunity. And finally, they want to know your defensibility story, because if you are successful, copycats will inevitably enter the market. They want to know how you intend on keeping them from taking away that market from you. But of all these things, the thing that gets the conversation started with investors is traction. Investors care about traction above everything else. If you can show the beginnings of a hockey stick curve where the y-axis is users, revenue, or best of all, profit, I don't care who the investor is, he or she will sit you down and want to understand your business. So how do you get traction? Traction is nothing more than engagement of your product with your customers. And you don't need a hockey stick curve to start this conversation. Any traction is better than no traction, and you're better served at first not by chasing down investors with big bags of money, but rather chasing down customers with smaller dollar bills. But here too, when we try to pitch our product to customers, we tend to lead with our solution. And here too, that falls on deaf ears. Customers don't care about your solution, but their problems. If you put yourself in their shoes, it's easy to see this. We're all customers, after all, of other products. Take your smartphone, for example. You probably didn't wake up today with an overwhelming desire to buy an iOS 8 or Android app just for the sake of it. But maybe you're planning a trip and a mobile app would ease that planning. We don't buy products solely for the underlying solution or technology, but rather to solve a problem. So the way to get the attention of a customer is not by pitching your solution, but by nailing their problem. You do this with the use of a unique value proposition or a promise, which is the intersection of their problems with your solution. In order to build an effective unique value proposition, you have to be as specific as possible and nail that customer's problem. The most effective way for doing this is by narrowing down your customer segment to initially only target early adopters. When you try to market to everyone, you end up marketing to no one. Facebook is a great example of this. While Facebook today has almost every possible customer segment on the planet using their product, they didn't start out that way. They started out with a clear definition of their early adopter who happened to be a college student on the Harvard campus. By honing in on college students, they were able to focus their product and marketing solely around that segment. And only once they cracked that segment did they expand to others. Now, if you can get these two things right, that is, you have a strong promise and it's narrowly targeted at your early adopters, the next question is, what is the currency of exchange? I use the word currency and not money because this currency might not always be money depending on your business model. In a direct business model where you deliver value to your users and turn them into customers, that currency is money. Here, as long as you provide value commensurate with the pricing, you have a fair exchange. In a multi-sided business model though, like say an ad-supported platform like Facebook, there is a difference between users and customers. Facebook, for instance, delivers value to its users for free, but it's the advertisers who pay them. The advertisers are their customers. In these business models, users represent a derivative asset, and the currency of exchange here isn't money, but rather attention, which is then sold to the advertisers. Other types of derivative currencies that could be used in these kinds of business models are user-generated content, such as with YouTube, data that you might collect, or some other kind of engagement that you could similarly trade in a secondary market. Now, much like traction was the thing that got investors' attention in the last slide, in this picture, the thing that gets customers' attention is your unique value proposition or promise. If you can nail your customer's problem with a big promise, you can capture their attention. Otherwise, they simply leave. With a job board site, for example, simply regurgitating your features and benefits might get some attention, but leading with a bold headline like, "Find your dream job in 60 days or we'll give you your money back," is an example of a strong promise. You'll notice that while it doesn't say anything about your solution, if a job seeker were to read that headline on a landing page, chances are high they'll want to learn a little bit more. So the reason I share these different worldviews of a product with you is to help you redefine the true product of an entrepreneur. The true product of an entrepreneur is not limited to just building a great solution, but rather building a working business model. To do this, you need to have a big vision, but turn the implementation of that vision or your solution into a question mark. You similarly need to turn everything else in your business model into a question mark. The true job of an entrepreneur then is to traverse this business model and systematically de-risk each of these question marks over time through a series of conversations. We have conversations with customers where the focus is on techniques for understanding and learning from them versus simply running surveys and focus groups and asking them what they want. We have conversations with our team, investors, and advisors where the focus here is on defining, measuring, and communicating progress even when, and especially when, our products aren't yet generating any revenue. And finally, we also have conversations with competitors, but these aren't the nice sit-down type of conversations, but rather marketing and positioning conversations. I put this one at the end because I find that most people prematurely try to identify and anchor against their competition, which can be a fatal mistake. Positioning against your competitor is predicated on the fact that your competitor has a clue. If they are new to the market like you, they might be just as clueless as you are about what customers want. And even though you are going in the opposite direction, if neither of you are headed towards customers, both of you will fail in your own different way. Your true competition then is not determined by who you think they are, but rather who your customers think they are. And the best way to uncover this is through the right kind of conversation with your customers. So how do you do all of this? You can find the long answer in my book, Running Lean. In the book, I systematically walk you through the process of vetting new product ideas and building successful products. It's chock full of real-world case studies and field-tested tactics for doing just this. But here is the condensed version of the book, shown here as 3 core meta principles that I'm going to be. Let's walk through each one. The first meta principle, document your plan A, is all about taking a snapshot of your initial idea or vision. Last time, I shared this high failure rate number with you. But the more interesting number is this second statistic that tells us that most successful companies succeed by drastically changing their original plans along the way. What then separates successful entrepreneurs isn't necessarily starting with a perfect idea, or what I like to call your plan A, but rather finding a plan that works before running out of resources. But the first step of this journey is drawing a line in the sand and declaring your plan A, even though we know it's most likely going to change. The reason we do this is because of this second statement. As entrepreneurs, we are especially gifted at creating a reality distortion field, and we can rationalize anything after the fact. If, for instance, you launch a product in the summer months and it doesn't sell, the reason is obvious. It's because everyone is on vacation. If your product still doesn't sell in the fall, it's probably because everyone is just coming back from vacation and maybe their kids are also just starting school. Then, in the US at least, we have Thanksgiving, Halloween, and then Christmas. With this kind of logic, there's hardly any time in the year to launch a product. We want to avoid this kind of after-the-fact rationalization and take a more empirical approach with our businesses. You will never have perfect information, but you need to act anyway. That is why it's important to draw a line in the sand with your business model and document your initial plan. Now, traditionally, we have used a business plan for this purpose. Raise your hand if you've ever written a business plan before. Now, keep your hand up if you enjoyed that process. Whenever I ask this question in a room full of people, most people put their hands down immediately. But there's always 1 or 2 people that leave them up. Those guys must enjoy torture as well. I'm kidding, of course. The business plan is a good exercise for the entrepreneur because it forces them to think more critically beyond their solution to how they will build a business around that solution. The problem I have with the business plan, though, is that the people who make you write them don't often spend the time needed to read them. They instead ask for the 1-page executive summary, the 10-page slide deck, or the 30-second elevator pitch. If you're going to have to condense your plan down anyway, why not start with a condensed version? This is why the 1-page business model format has gained a lot of popularity lately. It's a single diagram that captures your business model, and it looks something like this. This is the lean canvas format that I created, and it's currently used across thousands of startups, universities, accelerators, and large companies as a replacement to business plans. If you've ever written a business plan before, you'll recognize a lot of the boxes here. I liken these boxes to basic building blocks like Lego pieces. You can use these pieces to build some simple models like this one, or a more elaborate model like this one, all with the same building blocks. Compared to the business plan that often takes several weeks or months to write, you can create one of these business models in just 20 to 30 minutes. But more importantly, if you put one of these models in front of someone, they can't help but read it because it's on a single page, and they can't help but have an opinion, and that is the key to success. It's at the intersection of these conversations with people other than yourself that you really learn and make forward progress. If we take a step back to this original epiphany, the lean canvas essentially applies the divide and conquer technique to building a business. It takes the complex problem of building a business and deconstructs it into its component pieces. Each of these pieces is like a jigsaw puzzle that has to come together at the end, but can be tackled independently. Another technique taken from the product development playbook is tackling what's riskiest versus what's easiest, which is the second meta principle. If, for instance, you had 6 months to build a complex product, you wouldn't start with the easiest stuff because you know you can do that at any time. You would start with what's riskiest, so when month 5 comes along, you're not thrashing like crazy. But when it comes to our businesses, we often throw that logic out the door. We tend to start by building a complete product when that may not always be the riskiest part of the business model. People often ask me, where is the risk box on this canvas? My answer is that everything on this canvas is a risk, because until you validate it, everything on it is uncertain. That said, not everything on the canvas is equally risky at the same time. Trying to tackle everything at once would not only be overwhelming, but also suboptimal. That's where this 3-stage product lifecycle process comes into play. It lets you systematically de-risk your product in stages where each stage is driven by a clear objective. The first stage is the problem-solution fit stage. The key question we ask ourselves here is, do we have a problem worth solving? I put every idea of mine through this first stage because while ideas are cheap, acting on them is quite expensive. An idea can easily consume years of your life, so you better make sure it's going to be worth it from the start. The good news is that you can navigate this first stage without having to build a product. The key insight that allows this comes from this slide that we have already covered. Customers don't care about your solution, but their problems. So instead of a complete solution, what you need to build is an offer that can stand in for your solution. The first component of the offer is your unique value proposition. The job of the unique value proposition from last time is getting your customer's attention. You do this by nailing your customer's problem. Let's take a nightclub in the city as an example. I might know that they fill out on the weekends, but struggle to fill out on the weekdays. If I leave the nightclub owner a message on their machine where I tell them that I know they don't sell out on the weekdays, but that I have a solution or a system in place where I can help them do that every single night of the week, and if they'd like to learn more, to please give me a call back, and that it would only take 15 minutes of their time, and then I hang up, guess what's going to happen? There's a pretty high likelihood that nightclub owner will call me back, because not only did I nail a critical must-have problem of theirs, but I'm only asking for a 15-minute time commitment to hear me out. Now, when they call me back, if I don't have anything compelling to tell them, they'll naturally get angry and hang up on me. This is where the second part of the offer, or the demo, comes in. The demo is a carefully scripted story designed to get your customers from point A to point B, with point A being their current reality, riddled with problems, and point B being their future reality, where you solve those problems for them. In the case of the nightclub, I might describe access to a database of out-of-town tourists that need a space for a certain kind of an event. I would effectively market the nightclub to them and take a small commission in exchange for filling the club on slow nights. The job of the demo then is to help your customers visualize your solution. In this case, I use the verbal narrative, but for more complex products, your demo could be a set of screenshots, videos, or even a physical prototype. If the demo works, your customers will naturally get to the third part of the offer where they'll inquire about pricing. This is where you state your pricing and then measure whether your customers take the offer or not. You validate for problem solution fit once you can repeatedly get customers to accept your offer. The other goal during this stage is refining your offer into the smallest product or service that you will create next. Remember, we want to avoid this big middle where we go away for several months to build a product. You do this by scoping down your first solution into something we call the minimum viable product, or MVP. The MVP is the smallest solution you can build that delivers customer value. As a bonus, you should always try and also capture some of this value back, which is just a fancy way of saying you should get paid to solve your customer's problem. I tend to be a big fan of charging from day one and don't recommend hiding behind alpha or beta labels because it delays testing of one of the more critical aspects of your business model, which is revenue. Without revenue, there is no business in the business model. With your MVP defined and built, you can then enter stage 2, or the product market fit stage. The key question that we ask ourselves here is, have I built something that people want? This is where the rubber hits the road and you test some of the most critical assumptions about your solution and business model economics. A key principle during this stage is that you don't need lots of users to learn, only a few good customers. We can use Facebook again as a great example for this. Facebook didn't have to launch to all college campuses day one to convince their investors they were building something valuable. By repeatedly demonstrating very high engagement metrics on just a few college campuses, they could extrapolate this to all students, and their valuation went through the roof. Fewer campuses helped them focus on getting the product right first before pursuing scalability, which is what stage 3 is all about. Once you have a product that is working, you then shift focus from continuing to improve that product to accelerating growth around that product. And that's what stage 3 is all about. Next, let's cover the last meta principle. The first two meta principles were all about planning and prioritizing your plan of attack, while the last one is about the mechanics of testing that plan. You've probably heard me use terms like empirical testing and hypotheses along the way. That's because a lot of this methodology is heavily baked in the scientific method. We treat each statement in the canvas as an untested hypothesis and run experiments to validate or invalidate it. This picture describes what the experiment loop looks like. This is the build, measure, learn loop taken from the lean startup process. It starts out at the very top with an idea that you'd like to test. You then build some aspect of a product to test that idea. This doesn't have to be a complete product, and it's often better to build the smallest thing you can to test the idea, like a screenshot or a prototype. You then put this artifact in front of customers and measure their reaction to it. You can do this either qualitatively through face-to-face interviews, for instance, or quantitatively through analytics and metrics. At the end of this loop, you turn this data into learning, which fuels the next set of ideas to test. And then you rinse and repeat from here. At a high level, this loop is no different than the traditional product development process I showed you. The difference, of course, is in the feedback loop. With the traditional product development process, we have one big idea, which we turn into one complete product that we then release to customers. That's where we really learn how right or wrong we are and have to restart the process with subsequent attempts. With the running lean process, on the other hand, instead of running one big iteration loop, we try and fit it into 10 or 100 smaller loops and use each one to course correct along the way. There are 3 key attributes that are critical for running effective experiments. The first one is speed. We need to make sure that these loops are as small and as fast as possible. Next, these experiments always have to end in customer learning. It's not enough to build a great landing page. You have to build a great landing page and measure how customers behaved with it, all within one experiment loop. And finally, something I personally spend a lot of time emphasizing is focus. You have to be focused on the right risks in your business, or you'll get suboptimal results. This Venn diagram helps to illustrate these concepts even further. If, for instance, you're going fast and are focused but aren't learning from customers, the image of a dog chasing its tail comes to mind. If you're focused and learning from customers but aren't going fast enough, this one is obvious. You will either run out of resources or, worse, have a fast follower come in and take your market away from you. And finally, if you are going fast and are learning but are focused on the wrong risks, you fall into the premature optimization trap. This is where you spend time optimizing your landing pages or code when you might not yet have enough traffic to justify these kinds of activities. This last slide summarizes the running lean meta process in a single picture. On the left, I show you the first step of documenting your plan A, and you can see a number of lean canvas icons here. This is because I encourage the first step to be done more like a brainstorming activity where you explore variations to your original idea. The reason is to avoid something we describe in computer science as a local maxima trap. Imagine I blindfold you and place you somewhere on a hill and ask you to get to the highest point in that landscape. You probably will have no problem fumbling your way to the top of the hill, but when you take off your blindfold, you see a giant mountain next to you. Because you were only focused on traversing the hill, you missed the mountain. We want to avoid this tunnel visioning around a single business model, which is why I encourage some initial time box brainstorming for alternate model searching. Now, as with any brainstorming activity, you will create some fantasy models along the way, which you can immediately eliminate at the end of the brainstorming session. Those that are left go through the second stage of risk prioritization. After that, you start the process of systematically testing these models in parallel. You start by understanding the problem, which might prompt you to discover that some of these models fall apart because your target customers don't really have these problems. Next, you start the process of defining solutions and might eliminate more models along the way because maybe your target customers don't accept your pricing model and you can't make the business model work without that. You then go through 2 phases of validation, first at small scale and then at large scale to maximize the full potential of your business model. So that in a nutshell was a high-level roadmap of the running lean process. I'll illustrate this by showing you some rapid-fire case studies starting with a software product from my own company. The product I'll show you is the Lean Canvas business modeling tool that today has close to 150,000 users. It's the preferred format for capturing your vision or business model on a single page, and it's widely used by universities, accelerators, small and large companies all over the world. The problem I wanted to solve was that the business planning process was broken. The problem with the traditional business plan was that it took too long to write, and the worst part was that even the people who made you write it, typically investors, didn't take the time to read it themselves. Most entrepreneurs dread writing a business plan and often forego planning altogether, which isn't any better. So I started searching for a more portable format and stumbled into the work of Alex Osterwalder, who created the original business model canvas. I started experimenting with it on my own products and ended up creating a derivative format called Lean Canvas, which I first published on my blog for feedback. The reaction was so positive, and being a technologist, I already saw possibilities for turning this into an online tool, but I held myself back from rushing out to build this solution. I instead decided to first test a faster implementation of my solution through my workshops. I created a paper version of the canvas, which I used in these workshops with other entrepreneurs. This feedback helped me make a number of refinements very quickly. With the help of a small volunteer team, I then built the first version of the online tool over 2 weeks, which I didn't open to the public, but kept using in my workshops for a few more months to test and validate that the tool was indeed delivering on value. This is the principle of demonstrating value at small scale before pursuing growth. My logic was that if I can get people paying for my workshops to use this tool, then what chance would I have with complete strangers? As with the book, my focus then shifted from product to scaling, and through several strategic partnerships with universities and accelerators, we got it in front of a lot of people, and are now about to cross the 150,000 user mark. I often get asked whether this methodology is applicable only during the early stages of a product, or can it be used in the growth stage? I successfully applied these principles to the Lean Canvas product, not just to launch the product, but also to grow the offering with several additional features, which is now part of a rebranded and larger product offering that we now call Lean Stack. Even that launch took the exact same approach, starting with a few iterations of solutions tested on my blog, then in workshops, and once it was working there, staged rolled out to new and existing customers. So let's now shift to a low-tech example of starting a restaurant. Starting a restaurant is no different than building any kind of product. Most restaurateurs, like entrepreneurs, prematurely daydream about their finished product, about the ambience of their restaurant, the feel of the napkins, or the menu, and get caught up in chasing investors to afford this dream of theirs. But the biggest risk when starting a restaurant isn't the ambience. It isn't even the location. It's the food. The key assumption to first test is whether you can cook well enough so that people will want to eat your food in the first place, and not just once, but repeatedly, and ideally pay for it. You don't need a restaurant to test this. You could start with simply inviting friends over or running a catering business first. To see another interesting way to test these starting risks, let's take a trip to my home city of Austin, Texas, where food trailers have made quite the splash in the last few years as a minimum viable product. Food trailers used to be limited to just cheap street food, but in recent years we've seen a number of great restaurants come out from them. Here's a popular cupcake place that now has several brick and mortar locations in the city. Here's an interesting fusion of Korean barbecue and tacos. And finally, this is my favorite barbecue spot, Franklin's Barbecue. In Austin, you can go wrong with barbecue or tacos. Sadly, I haven't eaten here for quite a while because the chef Aaron Franklin pictured here got named the best barbecue pitmaster in the country. The line was already long at the trailer, now it's even crazier in his restaurant where they sell out every single day, often several hours even before opening their doors. All of these examples are staged approaches to systematically rolling out a vision. It's much cheaper and faster to get a license for a food trailer, which gets the restaurateur to start testing their food first. Because a trailer is mobile, they can also test different locations at the same time. Once these businesses start to take off and get enough traction, many of them move into traditional brick and mortar stores. But interestingly, many of them still keep their food trailers around. These food trailers are still the fastest way for them to test a new menu item, which they can change up every week. Once they have something that repeatedly works in the food trailer, do they then train their staff and roll it out to all their other restaurant locations? Okay, so maybe some of you can see how this approach can be applied to books, food, software, but what about hardware? Hardware is considered a lot more expensive and harder to iterate in a staged fashion. So let's take an example of building hardware, something really hard, like building a car. This is a new concept car by Lit Motors that is half car and half motorcycle. The problem they set out to solve is that a lot of people don't need all 4 seats in their car because maybe they are single or use their cars only for work and drive alone. These people would rather drive a motorcycle, but motorcycles aren't safe and you can't drive them when it's too cold or raining, for instance. So these guys came up with this concept car that seats one person and is essentially an enclosed motorcycle. It also uses some great gyroscope technology, the thing that was also used in those Segway scooters to keep them from falling over. Here, these gyroscopes keep the car upright when you step out of it, which is a pretty cool effect just to watch on its own. But they also make it safer in the event of a crash. The lit motor vehicle stays upright and does not roll over even if it gets hit on the side. Let's see how these guys launched this product using a staged model. They first tested customer demand using a smoke test offer. They put up a landing page with sketches and many different concept videos to generate awareness and build up a massive list. While this was good early traction, at some point they had to build the first MVP because there's only so much you can test through a smoke test offer. They knew that the typical process to get a car into production generally took 6 manufacturing iterations, which was a costly and time-consuming process. So they decided to build the first MVP by hand. The person in this picture is the founder of the company, and he loves building cars as a hobby. He got his team into a garage, and they built the first MVP, which you see in the lower half of this picture. It's the metal-looking thing without the paint finish. As with my book example from last time, the finish of the car wasn't the riskiest thing for them to test at first. These guys then set up a temporary dealership in a warehouse and rented and emailed their target early adopters on the list to come in for a test drive. Enough people loved the car so much that they left a down payment which got them the early traction they needed to move forward with the project. They're now preparing for the first batch of production-ready cars, and if you're interested, you can reserve your car on their website as well. The principle to highlight here is that the concept of the MVP isn't always about being cheap and fast, but rather cheaper and faster than the alternative. The alternative in this case would have been to raise investment on an idea and secure the right partners to build their first batch of vehicles. Instead, they demonstrated early traction by first getting people interested using a smoke test offer and then getting a number of them to take their pre-order offer using a demo, which was a hand-built prototype. Hopefully these case studies have showed how these principles can be applied more generally to any kind of product. I can keep on going with even more case studies, but I like to shift gears and talk about what's next for you. If you're still doubtful, or better yet, if you have a product that you think cannot be delivered this way, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you.